Hi everyone, today my partner and I will prove to you that public educators are underpaid. This is not a question about the allocation of funds, but strictly a moral question about teacher salary. A question whose answer I see as so obvious it should be a nonpartisan, unanimous decision not up for debate. Our public school teachers, the pillars of our society, the ones who connect, inspire, and touch 50 million students per year are not being paid enough. The dedicated individuals who create and nurture our engineers, our scientists, our doctors, our coaches, and quite literally every job position this country offers are being held back, along with their students, along with us. Almost all of us pass through the hands of at least 10 teachers. I, for instance, have had over 30 teachers motivate and inspire me. To say there's a limit in investing funds in education in our teachers says there is a limit to American prosperity, that there is a limit to American innovation. Teachers sometimes spend more time with their students than their parents do. They have homework just like their students, and in these tragic days are being asked to risk their lives to gun violence. As we learned on Wednesday, there is on average one school shooting per week. And many teachers, if they haven't already, will soon be asked to carry firearms. Teacher positions were not made for the weak. They were made for those who value human life and knowledge, and were willing to risk their lives to motivate generation after generation. Why are we asking these dedicated individuals to live on the edge, to work multiple jobs just to get by, to do more than we are already asking of them? Why is the average pay of a public school teacher in Idaho $35,000 when the average house in the Ada County costs $350,000? Teachers are so misrepresented and so worn down, we can't even imagine them having lives outside of the classroom. But they do. They have families to take care of, other jobs to get to, and huge financial worries to carry on their shoulders. So when I get asked, are teachers getting paid enough? I respond, absolutely not. Today, Jonah and I will prove to you that public school teachers are simply underpaid.
Okay, good. Now, Jonah. So his 25 minutes.
All right, good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, Lakowski. I'm just going to preface this. I am biased to this issue. Two of my three parents are educators, so I feel really strongly about this and very emotional. But at the same time, I'm going to bring you the cold, hard facts you want. All right, so today I will be not only showing you, but proving to you that teachers are underpaid and deserve higher wages. Fundamentally, teachers are underappreciated, blamed for students' problems, and even sometimes America's, but most importantly, underpaid. In an NPR poll, 2/3 of Americans would agree with the statement, teachers are paid an unfair wage. Imagine that. As a sidebar, before I begin my argument, I would like to mention that years upon years of education can result in a lower salary than many jobs you could obtain with a high school education, and that teachers are forced to pay for these themselves, but that doesn't really have anything to do with them being underpaid. It's just something I want you to keep in mind. So back to my main argument. In my proof, I will focus on how integral teachers are to our education system, current wage trends, discrepancies in teacher pay across states and foreign countries, and other topics relating to low teacher wages. My reason for stating all of these facts and not focusing on just three main points is that I want you to understand how many flaws there are with the current way that we pay teachers. So to begin, teachers are fundamental to the education process as they educate America's future workforce. They mold the minds of students and impart knowledge on them to lead them down a path to a successful career, education, and life. They are the cog in the machine that creates the final product. In American society, teachers face a ratio of only 3 million public school teachers to educate 50 million public school students. From the year 1966 to 2015, teachers' wages have on average actually decreased when you account for inflation at an average of $30 a week. This is in comparison to the wages that college graduates earn, where adjusting for inflation, their wages increased at $150 per week. This is why 20% of teachers say they leave the profession due to low pay. States allocate funding for education, which determines a teacher's salaries and benefits. This creates a large discrepancy in the budgets between states across the nation, and most importantly, neighboring states. This causes a mass migration from teachers with a lower salary to states with a higher salary, and it leaves desolated and understaffed school systems in its wake. Their only option is to hire underqualified teachers or raise student-to-teacher ratios. Many states such as Oklahoma, West Virginia, and Arizona have seen massive teacher strikes over wages. On April 26th, Arizona saw the largest protest in history regarding schooling at 50,000 educators walking out of their job, leaving schools just out of business. These strikes usually end in a pay raise from the state or teachers to pursue education in another state, like I mentioned, or they'll just leave the field altogether. How can a school system expect to thrive if it is missing its most important piece? It can't. $46,122 is the average salary of teachers in Idaho, and this is 46th in the nation, according to the NEA, which is the National Education Association. In Luxembourg, elementary teachers at the top of the pay scale can make $124,000 a year. That's roughly a $100,000 difference. I'd say a pretty stable income. In Korea, a top-ranked country in education in almost every finding, their top pay scale for education, $84,000 a year. They're basically making double what American educators are. And then when you compare this to the 376 teachers in the Nampa School District, the third largest in Idaho, they make less than $40,000 a year. You can't live off of that, you simply can't. You may think that a more efficient way to pay teachers is on a rewards-based system for their students' performance, but teachers will then only teach students a curriculum based off of standardized testing, meaning students will miss out on a fully encompassing education. They may perform well on one test, but what have they truly learned? To beat the system? This is not to say that standardized tests don't have their place, but they should not be on a basis of evaluation for teachers' performance. Maybe the kids were having a bad day on the test. Maybe the kids just don't like you as a person. So now they're gonna perform bad on the test, and you lose out salary because of the opinion of a few snot-nosed elementary kids. It's a very fatal flaw. Another factor that discounts this reform system of teacher pay is socioeconomic differences in schools. And so my mother is taught in a very poor school district and a very affluent school. And the kids that came into her grade in the poor school district were reading far below grade level. And not only did they not see as big of an improvement, but they didn't grow at the same rate as the affluent school districts would have extra resources such as tutoring, after school programs, and supportive parents. Another subject which Colette lightly touched upon in relation to last week is that teachers are signing up for shootings once a week across the schools in the US. Not only are they teaching these kids day in and day out, but they are even acting as a parental figure. But they also sign up to be a defendant of the children they educate. They risk their lives for what? The same wages as a manager at McDonald's or a garbage collector? Finally, teachers in underprivileged school districts must supply their students with the necessary equipment to educate. Teachers can only write off $250 per annual tax year for books, supplies, computer programs, not only for themselves, but for the classroom. I've seen this firsthand as my mother taught that same destitute elementary school I mentioned earlier, and we would go to the teachers' stores probably 3 or 4 times a year, buying supplies for her students, and racking up large totals throughout the year. Now she could only write off $250 of that. She had to dip into her own pocket just to make sure these kids had pencils, paper, and the resources necessary to receive an education. So with all these reasons, it's nearly impossible to argue against lowering domestic pay for our teachers. How can anyone disagree with providing our children, our country's future, with better resources and education through our teachers? Thank you.
Good. How can anyone disagree? I think Landry can.
Let's see.
I hope. Landry for a 6-minute attack.
So first of all, I want to clarify something. Like, nobody goes to teaching to make a lot of money. And being a teacher is a calling. So hence, you do not become a teacher to be rich. And you are doing it because you want to serve your country and you want to provide resources for the brighter future of your students. And every job requires a sacrifice, some type of sacrifice. So does being a teacher. So the arguments that teachers spend money on school supplies and all that comes from their sacrifice. They have to give up on their money to like provide the best resources to those students. I don't understand why they think that these teachers are underpaid. School teachers receive FT pensions and insurance packages as part of the compensations. These benefits as well, they also have like favorable hours and extensive vacation, which are left out of the discussion. So like they get paid during vacations and all that. So we need to take that into account. And so this is to say that, so they get, the average salary in the US is $58,000. And that's to say that they get that plus generous benefits. And all these are above the poverty line, so they are not poor. And the argument that they might be making less than other college-educated professionals is not relevant because it's hard to compare like a job to another. Also, the California Senator Kamala Harris wants to give American teachers a 13,500 average raise, and there are 3 million teachers in America. So if you want to like do the math, it's gonna be a lot of money. And how are teachers paid? They are paid by taxes. So whether it's property taxes and some government bonds. So that would mean what? It would mean that we Americans would need they would need to raise taxes in order to fund for these raises. Also, it would also mean that it will hurt the American fiscal budget because they would need to go to more debt, and we don't want that for America. And if higher salaries are too important for them, they might also either get higher salaries and less benefits, because that's not fair to other workers. So it's very hard to determine wages, because in this case wages are not determined by the free market. The wages are determined by the government, and that's what the government think that they should be getting. And so no one knows what they are worth and what they should be paid. And if it was left to the free market, we can be sure that many public school teachers are earning far more than they would have, because the free market would seek for better quality of education for lower costs. So that would mean that to lower the costs, they would have to pay them less. So I've seen examples where they say that, oh, this teacher has to work 4 jobs and things like that. I believe that this is more of a lack of financial education, because some of these people come to the College of Ida, where it's 3,000K every year. They take out loans, and they end up having to pay a lot with these small wages. So they can't go, they cannot live after they pay their loans. They cannot like provide for themselves, and that's why they have to do all these things. If they, for example, go to like a public school where it's like 8,000 per year, they would have the burden would have been less than it is for them. So like, what's the benefit of them to get like a degree in like an expensive school if they can get it like community college or like something like that?
That's it? Good. That's a lot. Okay, gentlemen, finish up the first half.
All right, I'm back again. Sorry, guys. So, I will concede him a partial point on that nobody gets into teaching for money. It's a yes and no equation. So yes, there are people that don't go into money, but you can't live off of these wages. As Colette mentioned in her set, houses in Boise are $350,000 a year. You'd have to not spend money for 7 years, and that's not even factoring in the taxes you have to pay. He also said that like teachers, their main sacrifice is money, and I argue, why is that the thing they must sacrifice? A lot of other professions sacrifice, long work weeks, maybe they don't get as long breaks, and teachers would probably be okay with that if they got paid more. They also have to pay for trainings, they have to pay for their master's degree because that's kind of what it takes to teach. And you also have to pay for credits, I believe it's biannually at a college, because you have to keep your teaching degree, and the way you do that is through getting college credits. He also mentioned that teachers receive very good benefits and vacation time. I would also like to add that only 1/5 of teachers remain in the profession long enough to receive these benefits that they sign on for, which is leaving 4/5 of teachers without the benefits. In the set, we said we didn't want to talk about the allocation of money, but since he brought it up, the lottery actually pays for a lot of education, and while there are taxes that help provide for the educational fund, in a poll by, I believe it was NPR, it was in the book, 50% of people would be okay with higher taxes if it meant that teachers could receive a viable wage. And I will leave you guys with an anecdote, and I'm going to paint you a picture. So a single mother returns home from wrangling 19 shithead second graders all day. Her son is overjoyed that she's there to help with his homework. So after helping her son, she grades papers along with him all night until she inevitably falls asleep from exhaustion. Now she has to get up the next day at 7:30 to rush to her job and teach these same students that caused her so much angst the day before. Fast forward, and the child is excited to spend the summer with his mother on her time off. But wait, she's heading out the door and back to school. She must teach summer school to provide for her small family. Well, that child was me. This is a fundamental debate on whether teachers should have their pay raised. It is not important to where the funds come from, and it shouldn't matter. How can you put a price on a child's education? How can you put a price on our nation's future? How can you put a price on the livelihood of families of educators across the nation? Thank you.
Okay, good. Turn your paper over. Make sure you have your name on the paper. This class has been pretty good at that.
Hi everyone.
You all ready?
My name is Landry, and my colleague is Nate. And today we are going to argue about this topic: are teachers underpaid? And we believe that teachers are not underpaid. So let's not confuse ourselves about like the numbers in the beginning. He said that in Idaho the average pay is 42,000, and she said 36,000. So we want to see this issue in a national spectrum. So said in the beginning, nobody goes into teaching for the money. And why we want to see this as a national issue is that it's obvious that a teacher from rural Idaho would make less than someone in New York. For instance, like a public school teacher would make public school teacher would make 45,000 in Mississippi, and in New York it would be 85,000. So in America, most people think that school teachers are underpaid, but those same polls show that Americans have little idea of what teachers are actually paid. So when they show them the numbers, the 2/3 who thought that they were underpaid, actually this number drops to like 42%. And teachers are government employees, which means that they are paid for taxes and government funds. So increasing their wages will be a burden to the poor taxpayer and the government budget. So let's be honest, the government money is tax money. So that means that everybody has to pay for it, whether you have a child or don't have a child going to school. Also, more money spent on education does not always amount to better education. So why would I pay for something that I'm not sure would like be beneficial to these students? Yeah, so these teachers, as I said before, also get very, very generous wages, and they shouldn't even be thinking that they are underpaid, because not many workers in America get those benefits.
Good. Now I'm gonna wait.